Hello and welcome. The British bank Standard Chartered has agreed to pay a penalty of $340 million to the New York State Department of Financial Services. New York regulator says the bank agreed that it was at fault over deals with Iran worth $250 billion that it hid from the regulator. In addition to the civil penalty, the bank agreed to install a monitor for at least 2 years to evaluate the bank's money laundering risk controls in its New York branch. I'm joined by Chris Roebuck. He's a banking expert from Cass Business School. Chris, how well has the bank dealt with this? Has Standard Chartered dealt with this, do you think?
I think that they've dealt with it quite well because, as your correspondent said, this somewhat flew out of the blue, a bit like being hit by a lorry, because it was announced overnight and no one knew anything about it. And certainly there are, I think, political elements in there. This is a new regulator. What it does suggest, though, is that there are potential problems not only for British banks, but for US banks and other international banks that are doing business in the US, in that we have probably 5 or even 6 regulators individually looking at the issue of Iranian payments in particular. And at that point in time, it was actually perfectly legal for a bank to do business with Iran as long as it didn't do it via America. So I think that there's an element of confusion about who said what in terms of the regulators. There's a little bit of political showboating for a new regulator to show off their teeth. So the banks have an issue in terms of who's going to be next, and are all the regulators going to work together, or is somebody going to come out fighting first?
Chris, what is interesting also perhaps about this case is Standard Chartered, Iran is its patch. The Middle East is its patch. This is where it's made its name, its reputation. Also, of course, in the Far East, also in Africa as well. But so it's particularly sensitive. The very fact that they've been doing business there is full of political minefields, I imagine.
Yes, absolutely. The fact that you have potentially broken the regulations that could potentially mean that you can't do dollar payments. There's the political implications in terms of doing business with Iran when other people in the area wouldn't be happy with you doing business with Iran. So it is extremely sensitive. I think that's one of the reasons why what's happened is both the regulator and Standard Chartered have got this out of the way as quickly as possible. The regulators got their first body, so to speak, in terms of establishing their reputation. Standard Chartered's had a bit of a slap on the wrist, but this is not going to be a long, drawn-out court battle with both sides attacking each other and all the dirty washing coming out in public, which is the last thing I think either side really wanted.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. Chris Roebuck now.